There's my theme song.
You can't see me right now, but I'm snapping. There you go. How's
That's
it going,
the
everybody?
intro song. Yes.
I know. We got eventually. Yeah, we will do it, man.
I mean, I can just keep making up little tunes. I'm totally fine with that too. Whatever it takes. Hey, real quick, since we're here and we're on, happy birthday, Raúl. What's it? Merry birthday. Happy birthday. Welcome to your birthday. Yes.
This is what I was waiting for. This is why I showed up to work, I'm
talking to my wife. I got to make sure everything's focused right now to make sure that your birthday is happening.
When we bring our guests on, we got to make sure that, we have a special 5 minutes also where she can wish me happy birthday as well. So
that's right. Give her a room to do that also.
Man, we
got going today.
Going today, this awesome stream. I can't wait. Our guest today, super cool. I love her. She's an awesome person. And we used to kind of work together, and we since kept in touch. And she has blown up so hard lately, like since the last time I've talked to her. So I figured I want to introduce her to Eustace. She runs a social media company for loan officers. She's an ex-loan officer. So it's somebody I think that has really great insight, knows knows the mission, right? We're all on the same mission here. And she's just really good at what she does. And so I wanted to introduce you, especially you guys like Mike and I think everyone was just going to hit it off today. So I'm just super excited. That's what we
I love new friends. It's my favorite thing.
So do I actually. I'm kind of an introvert, but I'm also very, very social too. I love.
Okay, less about you. Let's go ahead and introduce Deborah.
All right. Well,
we're done focusing on you. Your birthday's here. Congratulations. I want to talk to the person I came to talk to today.
All right. There's Deborah.
Oh, see, they got you. Where's the? You're
still doing
the thing. Oh, I was multitasking because I'm. Here we go.
Got her own.
It's your birthday. Okay, there we go.
Oh no, it's your birthday. Okay,
we're gonna party like.
Oh, there we go. Dude,
you
right there.
Congratulations.
I did you right there.
50 Cent loves you.
I had to bring it all back around to me, man. Thank you, Deborah.
Right, that's good.
Oh, so good to see you, Raúl and Mike.
Yeah.
Howdy. How's your day treating you so far?
Good. I've started off with a spark, like we talked about. So this is my crack. It's my go-go juice.
Yeah, right.
Get up and go juice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to give everybody a heads up, we actually were on the prep time before we went live. We were just talking the whole time. Didn't talk any prep. We just were chatting about everything. So
finding out all kinds of fun stuff about Deborah.
Yeah. So Deborah, give us a little intro on who you are and what you do.
Oh, that is a long. I'm still trying to figure that out. Who am I?
Aren't we all? I think
somebody
asked the other day, is like, what do your kids want to do when they grow up? It's like, I'm 43 years old. I still have no idea what I want to do when I grow up.
I'm like, I have to tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, y'all are freaking out. You're going into 7th grade. Like, trust me, it's okay.
Yeah.
Most people know me just largely from being on a lot of the mortgage coach calls, or they see me on different webinars or different speaking gigs. And I've really transitioned from a lot of different past careers. I've kind of evolved and worn multiple different layers of skin, I guess you could say. But my twin sister is the mortgage nerd, and she was the one that originally got me into the mortgage business. And I will say, coming from the middle school science classroom where I was dissecting frogs, I never, when she recruited me in, and I really was, pushing her against, I'm like, no, my first degree was nursing. My second degree was education. I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't want to go to the dark side of the world. And she was like, you've sent me more closed deals year to date than any top agent I work with. And I just have always loved being a natural connector. So I love finding problems and then finding solutions to the problem. So when she got me into the business, I never started from like a Countrywide or Bank of America or even any kind of traditional loan school. I did go and get licensed. And, our first week, we then went to Todd Duncan Sales Mastery. And then a couple months later, we went to his boot camp, and she was like, all right, you've this 3.5 pound binder full of scripts and process. And she's like, it's your job to implement and execute. And it was a good natural fit because I needed the experience of repetition of different loan types and really learning mortgage strategy beyond just order taker. And I was good at chunking things down from just teaching complex things in science to, middle school, 7th and 8th graders that were of all different learning styles. So, I was learning the business, and I was basically a business development person at first, where I had no fear. And some of that's because I didn't know what I didn't know. Like, I remember the company we were at, the minimum FICO score for a conventional loan was 640. And I thought that was the lowest FICO score that you could do for conventional. So I'm meeting with agents and talking to people. I'm like, oh no, 640 is the lowest. And an agent would come back and be like, no, my other lender said they can go down to 620. I'm like, well, that's a bad lender.
Right.
And I share that because sometimes there's lenders giving advice because it's not malicious. They just don't know what they don't know yet until they have experience, which is also why experience matters. Whether you're joining a team and you have a team lead or a branch manager that's helping you, they can help navigate you to compress your time. And so I don't think I could have had a harder person to learn from than your own identical twin who.
There was no friction there. You guys got along great all the time.
Well, we were raised by our dad from like 6 months old and on, and we were basically the boys he never had. So, he was the guy that would wake us up before school, and we would have to go make 50 free throws before varsity practice. And he just bred us to always work hard and be your best. And there's no one that's going to work harder than you than the other person who sleeps in your room, basically. So through all of that, we then ended up moving across the state. I had a 1-year-old, and I was pregnant with my 4th. Yes, I know how it happens. Yes, I taught the unit to middle school kids. So I was newer in this space, and that is when I got off of Denise's team. I joined a different company when we moved to Houston, and that was hard. I had to reinvent myself with no support. We still use those MRI books. Then I was working out of my home. I was literally on the table, like in delivery, doing pre-quals. And if there's any women that are listening, you may have experienced this because you feel like an ER doctor yourself. Like when you're a loan officer trying to get agent business and keep their business, it's like, I would be pushing my kids in the closet, like, shh, like, be quiet, because I'm on this call. I got to take this call. And so I reinvented myself down in Houston, and I was hopeful we wouldn't be there long, and we weren't. We then moved back about a year later, and I had to decide, do I go back and join my sister's team at her company, or do I stand on my own? And at the time, I'm like, I was the breadwinner. I had a 1-year-old and a newborn. And I thought, I'm going to try to do this on my own. And I learned through a lot of pain. So it was not easy.
Yeah.
I was insecure. I was thinking, who's going to use me over the mortgage nerd? She's been doing this for 10 years longer. She's like a celebrity in our space. We work at the same company with the same loan products at the same branch.
And you look exactly the same.
We have the exact same DNA. Right. So I had to learn how to really find my X factor. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about what I do now, because I actually had to, 1, reinvent myself multiple times, but then 2, figure out, how do I position that when I literally have someone that came from the same egg I did, and not allow my own insecurities or projected, things that maybe the CEO or, she wanted for me, or other people who say this is what you should do or what your goals should be. It was like, I had to really quit faking it. And I felt like a fraud. There was and I was visible on social, and people thought I had the perfect life, perfect wife, perfect mom. Right. And I was so drowning on the inside because I just knew I liked what I did, but I felt guilty admitting it wasn't a big enough impact for me for what I was used to, especially with teaching kids and having booster clubs and like really making a difference, that I thought, I don't have to be the lead singer. I've always been a great backup dancer, but how could I get financial literacy and really transform families' lives through the vessels of other loan officers across the country, where I don't have to be the face of it. But if this content could be seen enough times, maybe we could create a paradigm shift and really help the way Americans get into debt. So that was the journey.
Do you know what imposter syndrome is?
Yes.
You just basically explained it. So
and as a twin, can I tell you, like growing up, it's hard because everyone in society, they always want to put y'all next to each other. And it still happens today. And they're like, okay, you're the taller one. You're the one with the wider hips. And you're like, cool, thank you for that. That just really helps. Like, I'm going to start with those affirmations in the morning. But, it was ugly. And I had to grow up. There was, if there's any production partners that ever are listening to this, I remember watching Denise and being like, well, she just gets to go to happy hours all day and she's going on all these meetings that I'm setting. Like, it made it look a lot easier where I was like, I could do this. And then you go out on your own, you're like, holy shit, this is hard.
Yeah,
you were cleaning the fish and she was putting the fish in the boat, and then you don't realize how hard it is to get fish in the boat. That's the hard part.
And the systems and the process, and like it was just this reoccurring machine where leads were coming in. And I remember starting off, and I'm like, "Where's the fish?" Like I feel like I'm helping my agents with different lures, but like, where are they?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people have that imposter syndrome, and I could just imagine it's a little more amplified because it's with your twin. But usually people feel that with like me with my older brother, where we look identical too. We're not 3 years apart, but I can just imagine actually having an identical twin and how that would feel. But yeah, a lot of people actually go through that.
Well, and then just branding and how do you talk, because we sound alike, or mannerisms are similar, and it's so when people talk to me, they're like, I just don't know, what should my logo be, or what should the colors be? And I'm like, okay, none of that matters. Like, you got to get to like the root.
Yep.
So you come from a good, or what I would call a very beneficial background for what you do now, because you were a loan officer, you went through the process, you sold loans yourself, you were in the industry for a long time doing that. But like a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure you enjoyed it and you liked it and you were successful at it, but it wasn't probably your passion, right? It wasn't the thing that you were like, oh, I love waking up every day and talking to people about amortization. Like that's not the top of your list of things to do. So what I think is awesome is, just looking at your history of what you've done, you started your company, I think it was like in 2013. Is that right?
Well, not like officially, but I was working with Denise and doing marketing for her.
You were doing that stuff for yourself and started pushing in that direction.
A lot of that stuff was public facing though, because you were doing it for Denise. So you started.
Yeah. But you were doing that at the same time as you were, doing loans for folks. And so you had the experience of what it's like being a loan officer on the other end of the phone, talking to agents, talking to borrowers, going through what we go through every single day and doing that. So you had that knowledge inside of you, and that helped you, progress to what you're doing now, which is coaching people on how to use social media, how to get yourself out there a little bit more, which is such a big part of our market today that, and it's crazy that we're talking about this in 2022, but I mean, what is it, the percentage of loan officers and agents that are actually using social media on a regular basis? Like 2%. I mean, it's nothing. It's like there's very, very few people doing. So there's a big gap to fill. And you were able to go from, having that history of knowing what it was like being a loan officer, but then following your passion at the same time, which is the marketing aspect of things, helping, like you said, helping people find themselves so they feel more comfortable in these environments and doing this type of stuff, because that's always the big roadblock for people is like, nobody cares what I have to say, or nobody wants to see my face. It's like, that's not really what we're aiming at necessarily. So I want you to talk a little bit about, what it takes to get somebody from a place where, because with your company, that's what you guys do. I mean, that's what you specialize in. You've developed some great presence with different LOs all over the country, and they have a great marketing presence online. So how do you take somebody from, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I don't like to do it, to, it leaves just making that first video or doing that first post and getting yourself comfortable to be in that situation?
Well, so 2 things with what you just said. One, well, the first starting place, I'll just start there, is they've got to value and believe in social media. And I'll say, from doing marketing as an originator, and that's really our biggest differentiator is, trust me, I understood the law of leverage, and I have owned that same t-shirt where I had spent money with other agencies that I was like, if they could just help take this and multiply it. And the challenge was, and even with hiring people today, even with my company, if they don't understand the language and like the pains of consumers today, or the pains of a real estate agent business, or a divorce attorney or financial advisor, the way that a loan officer can actually build a business and knowing the talk, then what ends up happening is the posts end up becoming very vanilla. And I have a lot of clients I work with that work at great companies that have great marketing, but it's what everybody else is using. And so they don't want it because they want to be different. And the challenge with mortgage companies and CMOs, just that I network with, is they do have to create content that is going to be easily used for all, because it's for corporate. But what's amazing, and Raúl can speak to this, is even working in a mortgage company where we would say, here it is, all you have to do is post it, they still wouldn't post it. So the first part is, to me, belief. We can't solve something if you don't believe it's actually of value. And so sometimes that takes consistent messaging just for some demographics, and really understanding why. Like some of the older demographics, we got to remember they had already started their career before social media ever existed. So it's going to be a little bit more friction. And then you have Gen X, which Gen X is in a lot more leadership positions. When you look at how they were raised, that's when sitcoms like 90210 and Friends were just coming out. So they are more social beings at like dinner parties and like getting people together. That's just more of their norm. And social media was coming out again when they were starting their career path. And then you have
MySpace, baby. That's when we got rolling.
Yeah. But then, it wasn't until like 2009, 2010 before social media was even on a phone. So it's evolved very quickly, but you've got to really understand and believe and value how, and it's not about you. It's not self-interest. It's what you can share that could possibly change, even if it's just one person's life on the other side, because let's face it, they don't teach you these concepts in school. And it's not a sexy topic to talk about. And that is where people will stop, is because their real motive, and that's where I have to go really deep with people, is what is your true motive of wanting to be on social? If it's to become famous and your end goal is only measuring likes, followers, comments, you're going to be disappointed. It's too noisy of a space to, not that it can happen, but that's it. So,
or if your end goal is, I want to get leads, give me leads. How many people are going to call me because I made this video? I made a video. Nobody called me. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, if you want to go viral, you got to do something crazy like dancing on TikTok. And
it's the behavioral. This is where, to me, CFOs and CMOs clash heads, because there's things that data can't always prove. And my classic example to this is if you go to a nice restaurant and you have a shitty steak that's served on a silver platter, and then you have a really good steak and it's served on a trash can lid, which one by data is going to say is the better steak? Probably the one on the silver platter, because it's delivery and its context. So there's certain behavioral metrics and behavioral marketing, which is what I'm really passionate about, of how do you quantify the moment that someone makes the decision to contact you based off what they see on social. Because on a lead form, it may say, how did you find out about us? Which nobody cares if your marketing's working. That's, everybody knows that's what that little slot is for. But it may be, oh, Mike, my real estate agent, Mike. But that wasn't what caused them to make the decision to feel safe enough and secure enough to then eventually contact you. Because what we see is the millennials and Gen Zs, which are the largest demographics buying right now, their number one item is testimonials and word of mouth. They don't, in fact, they don't even care how many followers you have. But what happens is they're research obsessed. They're going to pull you up. They're going to scroll for a couple feet. So when people are so focused on, in like perfectionism of this one single post, I'm like, dude, it's in context. Like people are going to scroll a couple feet and they're going to make two judgments on you: warmth and competency. Are you?
That's a real hard thing to. Do you think? I'm sorry. I just want to ask you on that. When you're talking about salespeople in general, right? Because you work with salespeople all day long. The mind shift from everything I do has to result in a lead or some type of actionable marketing event that I get back. Because if I go door knocking, right, knocking on neighborhoods, I'm gonna get a listing. If I call all my agents every day, I'm gonna get a lead. Like these are all lead based activities. And so to switch somebody out of that mindset of every single thing I do has to result in some sort of a response or whatever, and using social media for that purpose, like, okay, this is what it's going to be, and having to shift their brain to go, well, wait a minute, not really. I mean, it is, but really what you're trying to do, and this is what I say, and I don't know if you agree with this, but it's the social media aspect is I'm getting in front of people I already know and reminding them on a daily basis about what I do to some extent, because I can't always be there whenever they make the decision to buy or sell or refinance or whatever the case may be. So I have to be at the top of their brain. But if they don't already have some sort of validation, whether they were referred to me from an agent or a family member or whatever, and then my social media presence and my reviews is that validation to them to say, hey, look, not only did your mom say he was great, but all this stuff online, you can see him, he's a real human being or she's a real human being. Give them a call. Like that's really, especially in the beginning, if you're not viral, like that's really kind of what it is, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish. Would you agree?
Yes. And I will say, if you're doing reels or any kind of short form vertical content, like I can look at the analytics and we'll get more people who see the reel that are not followers, believe it or not, which is why I think the biggest miss on the call to action is most people say like or comment below. And I'm like, you need to be telling people to follow you because you want to be showing up in the feed. But most of the analytics is actually people who don't follow you.
Well, that's on the reels and stuff, right? Because that's
only
really what that's going to.
yeah. But that, to your point, I tell clients, and I do weekly coaching every Friday. I send them a coaching email with a video where I tell them it's a mindset shift from going from a salesperson to a marketer, and not a B2B marketer, not a B2C marketer, but a human to human marketer where you've got to be, it's psychology. You've got to know what is the real problem that your clients are facing and what do they think is value. And it's no longer like the days of marketing. That's why there's a big marketing shift going on right now, because there was too many times marketers dilute and destroy everything over time. But people don't want, they're paying for more ad blocking services. They're tired of being marketed to. People don't want the bullshit anymore. They're tired of those big hooks that says, take this pill, lose 50 pounds in one day, and you'll also look 20 for the rest of your life. Too many times we've done that to hook people in, and they were, not satisfied. So that's no longer going to work. You've got to know their problems and deliver value based off their problems, because now the consumer is actually in control. They can restrict you, they can block you, they can block your ads. People can write a review and they can comment on things. Like, they are in control of even of what they see, because the algorithms now are even whatever you're interested in, it's trying to feed you more of that content. So now more than ever, it wasn't like the old days before social media came out and we could really, I call it manipulate, because that's what marketers would do when they learned enough about psychology. It was manipulation. That's not working anymore. There's a major shift going on. And even some of the top CMOs that I network with are like, we just don't know why what we've always done isn't working. And I'm like, well, because you're doing it the way you've always
done it. Yeah.
I also think too, it's like a weird line between sales and marketing. And I think a lot of people don't know the difference. And it's it's because it's very different. The way things look, like you can do a reel, right? And it could just be, that's marketing, right? You can take that same reel and then add money to it and boost it. And now that becomes an ad, but it's the same piece of content. It's just different intentions.
Right.
So that's like the really, really weird line right now that we're in. And I think that's why a lot of people are confused. And I also think too, that like the word right now on when you watch a lot of these talks and a lot of the coaches and things like that, like in the mortgage space, it's very much like, do these things for free. Like, nobody wants to pay for this stuff, right? So go on TikTok, go do the reels, go do these things. But what people have to understand too is like there's two ways to get to the top. Either you go viral or you pay to play. And so that's the thing is like, what a lot of what people are talking about, like let's say Gary Vee and all these people, that's all organic reach. That's all marketing. That's not going to get you a phone. Well, it'll potentially get you phone calls, but that's not what the end goal is. If you want phone calls off a piece of a video that you make, you have to put money into that video and you will get a phone call based off of that. And so I think that the line is so blurred right now that people are trying to do free content and get a phone call for each piece of content they get. And it's just not going to happen because it's different intentions.
Or they're expecting to get, 60,000 followers and a ton of likes. And I'm like, that's where, again, you have to go back and look at the analytics of, since 2019, we saw a huge decline in the number of humans that would ever like or comment on posts or even follow accounts. And to me, when you look at COVID, that we saw people who really increased their screen time, where screen time is now replacing TV, radio. And so human behaviors over time, we just get lazy. And it's now that we're more comfortable and we're using social more in our everyday being, people just aren't liking or commenting as much. And they also don't want phantom ads following them. So people think, oh, I made this content and I have 2 views and 3 likes, and 2 of those likes were family members. It's like, I have screenshots from presidents of mortgage companies, because I run the Modern Mortgage Summit pages and Modern Real Estate Summit pages and stuff with Mortgage Coach and Win by Noon. So that it's more like productivity and like coaching tactics. And so the loan officers will send me these screenshots that the president of that company sends in his monthly emails, yet he's never commented, never liked, and doesn't even follow the account. But he knows and has memorized, and that's his go-to of where he goes to get information when it's time to prepare for a meeting, is he knows there's going to be good stats because I am looking at stats everywhere, and he's using it in his content. So to me, if a loan officer can do that for a real estate agent, because that's the real annuity of income, as well as keeping it personable enough for before, during, and after the loan process, which is where most people fall off the wagon, it's then you become the most valuable player as the vessel and the resource of content that's educational, that's not just fluff. And if you can solve that need for an agent, well, then it doesn't matter if you miss that closing by 2 days, they're going to be loyal to you because you're solving their business problems beyond just, obviously you should close on time, but
and the platforms are kind of figuring this out a little bit too, right? Because they are, when you look at the reels, especially because that's, within the last, I don't know, year or two, that's really kind of taken off because it gets you out into people that, like you said, aren't in your sphere. They're people that are strangers that you haven't met, but it's not, they've created, all the platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, where you have the actual views. You can see the views. So you don't have the likes and maybe the comments. Maybe you only have 2 likes on the post, but it's got 9,000 views. So it's at least getting in front of people because we're in this scroll world where we just scroll to the next, to the next, to the next. So I think that they're adapting to it, which makes the validation for the loan officer or the realtor who's trying to do this stuff, at least gives you some sort of indication that people are seeing it. So that way you keep coming back and creating more. Because at the end of the day, they really want you to create content because that's what drives eyeballs to their platforms. That's what they want. So they want to give creators validation to say, hey, look, no, people are seeing. I know you're not getting the likes. I know you're not getting the comments, but it's getting in front of people. This one only got in front of 500 because they didn't spend a whole lot of time sitting on it. This one got in front of 10,000 because everybody watched it all the way to the end. Right. And so you get that validation there. I did want to ask though, because we talk when we do this stuff, we do a lot of mindset stuff, which is what we talked about going into this. But I do think more often than not, especially since we have you here, for those people that are actually trying to do this and getting out there, because really, like you said earlier, the client that you're looking for your company, they have to believe in social media, right? They have to actually feel like it has value to it, or else you're going to spend 6 months trying to convince them of that before they even, come and start using your services. So for people that do believe in it and do think it has value, from your point of view, like I want to know, we get to like nuts and bolts type stuff, right? So, Raúl brought up Gary V. I know you watch him. I follow him all the time. I love the guy's got more energy than the sun out there all the time.
I just saw him live on stage last week.
Wow. I saw that. I was like super jealous, man.
I was very shocked at some of his tips too.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, his thing is he says he is an attention broker. Like basically his understanding of the market is I understand attention. And that's where that's why he was into all of this stuff way before anybody ever showed up. Right. So, but what he's talking about right now is you're looking for value for your attention, like the attention value. So forever, all the old people were on Facebook. Like this is one of the things he's talking about now. So everybody that was, none of the kids wanted to be on Facebook because all their parents were and grandparents and people sharing kids and grandkids and family vacations and all that crap. But what he's saying now is like, well, right now, because of the reels and because of what's available on that platform, whatever you're spending or the time and effort that you put into it actually has a greater value sometimes right now on Facebook than it does on other platforms because it's underutilized, I guess would be the word, right? So
underpriced attention.
Yes. Yeah. So from your point of view, of those platforms that we're working with right now, what is a platform that you feel like if you're going to start somewhere, where do you start and where are you going to get the most attention for your time?
So I'll tell you how he answered this and he angled it for loan officers and real estate agents, which his sister is a real estate agent. For anyone listening, you may not know that, but this is what he said to do. And then I'll give my answer. Okay. He said the 3 most underpriced platforms that he would focus all of his time on, which just small disclaimer. He also said you should be creating 12 to 15 pieces of content a day, which the only thing I
52 when he's like, well, if you really want to get great, you got to do like 50.
Yeah. The challenge with that is you can also become noisy in a space that's already noisy. I don't always think the solution is being louder. It's got to be valuable. And with Gary, he has a little bit more of a broad topic. If you're talking about mortgage specific content, the amount of eyeballs that the algorithms are going to push it to, because you have to think of how many followers or people are searching for things that are mortgage related that they would then, looking at a priority order, if there's 5,300 posts every single second, and I post a picture with me and my 4 kids, and you post one at the closing table, And again, their goal is to show people in order content to feed an addiction to keep them on as long as possible. Chances are the prehistoric behavior of people may want to see the mom with 4 kids over the dude with at a closing table, unless they're like actively already in the process and maybe they show that they're looking at home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one thing to be aware of. And if you're creating content that's not going to get views or a lot of traction, it could also be telling the platforms that you're not creating valuable content, which may not actually be true. It's just in a very, like when I was a CEO of a family law firm for 2 years when I was trying to figure out who I wanted to be when I grew up. And that came from, I'd gotten my certification in divorce lending. Any possible mortgage class, like certified mortgage planner. I mean, I took them all. I had every designation because I loved to learn. But the 2 hardest words when we were doing SEO work was loan and attorney. Like those were just hard. So keeping that in mind is important. But he said business Facebook pages was number 1. He called it a fan page, which is really a business page.
Didn't they just change that? Isn't it like they have business, but they really want everybody to convert to fan pages now? Or did they do it on its own?
You can change it to creator.
Okay.
So it'll get a little bit more, reach, obviously. Same
Gotcha.
thing with your Instagram and TikTok accounts. Make sure those are set up as creator accounts, not
you have more access to features or whatever.
Yeah. The only challenge with that is sometimes when you use third-party scheduling tools, they don't usually allow you to schedule if it's set as a creator account. It has to be the professional account. So there's some things there, but he said, number 1, creating communities on your business Facebook page. And then number 2, he said, Instagram/YouTube Shorts. Although he really was saying Instagram is losing traction because Instagram has gone through so many changes and trying to figure out. He had said it's almost as if they are owned by Facebook, and Facebook is more of a distribution social channel, whereas TikTok is a creator account or creator channel. And Instagram is trying to figure out what they want to be. Are they going to be a distribution type channel? So they keep changing things. So he said if he would prefer people focus on YouTube Shorts and TikTok. So those were the 3.
Yeah, I'd heard that, or it's kind of like, when you look at Twitter, like if there's actually a social media platform that I'm on more than anything, it's Twitter. I like, as far as just being on there and using it, but that's what I use for like my news and for, I follow journalists and, stuff about economic news and all that stuff.
Sports? Are you big sports?
Yeah.
Usually.
I was when I was younger, but I realized that when I focused on sports, I would get obsessed with it. And if I was going to get obsessed with something, I would prefer it be something that benefits me personally. And whether or not the Mavs win the championship, look, I love the Mavs. I'm a big Luka Doncic fan. I think it's great. But if he wins an NBA title, it doesn't impact me at all. Exactly. Right? So I try to shift my focus in, because you can create social media to be whatever it wants to be. If you want to see stuff about dogs and cats all the time, it'll show you that. If you want to see stuff about finance and money, it'll show you that. It just depends on what you want. But with Twitter, it has become, take out all the Elon Musk stuff or whatever, but it's become very like it's an exclusive place, right? You don't, that's where you're going to see, celebrities and news creators and that kind of thing. It's not the person doing a dance or going on their video blog or whatever. I mean, unless that's what you cultivate it to be. But ultimately, for most people, it's kind of like the elites are on Twitter. And that's where you get your information. And it feels like with Instagram specifically, that with the changes that they've made recently, that they're kind of they want to aim in that direction. It's like, we want creators, but we only want the creators that are like the top notch, like the Kim Kardashians of the world. And those kind of, we want you to come here and view, be like a voyeur to all the, the people that you want to be, kind of a thing. Whereas Facebook and TikTok, even to some extent, even though TikTok's got a lot of problems with all the stuff that they're watching about you, but with those two things, they seem to be geared more towards the, like, I don't know if the word is local, but just you're trying to stay within your bubble a little bit on what you want. And they're not necessarily trying to highlight the already famous people of the world. Would you agree with that?
I would. And I would say that is where I think this is the hardest thing for loan officers. And I don't know if it's because typically we're more high C, compliant minded. And, you look at a real estate agent, they're usually more like personality driven, but people forget social media is meant to be social. And so it's where people go as an escape activity. It's when they could be on the toilet in the morning, they're at a sales meeting and they're bored, they're at a red light. So it's a mindless escape from life. Whereas the motive and intention of like YouTube I don't count YouTube as a social platform because to me, the motive and intention when people go to YouTube is to learn, and it's owned by Google. So I have been telling my clients, you've got to be doing YouTube shorts. In fact, when you create one piece of vertical, short form content, I'm like, repurpose that thing, like post it as a reel, share the reel to your story, add it to YouTube shorts, add it to TikTok. I have my own scheduling tool that will schedule to all of those.
Except they all need to be in a minute and 30 seconds. This whole minute, 90 seconds for,
I do a minute
amount of time for each one.
I just do a minute. That way I can post it on all of them.
Yeah.
You know what I was going to say also, Deborah, and this is like one thing for sure. Cause I got into the mortgage, space of, I don't know, 2017, I think. And a lot of this stuff wasn't really that big yet. And I remember I kind of came from the outside and I love Gary Vee. I brought this to the company I was at. People hated Gary Vee at the time. They just hated everything. And I'll have to say he's been right about everything, almost everything that, he talks about. And one of the things that I've always been a really big advocate for is YouTube. And I feel like in the mortgage space, it's the most underutilized. And I also feel that like, it's because, what you said, with the other platforms, it's when people are on the toilet, when people are at, at the red light, they're scrolling through. YouTube is actually very different. YouTube is like at nighttime before I go to bed, I'm trying to figure out like, how am I going to get into this house?
Right.
Why is everyone moving to Dallas right now? How is the market? And these are topics that you can't cover in a minute. And so that's why I feel, and then the really good thing about YouTube, it's very much like Netflix where, you can put recommendation videos inside of your content to keep people in your channel to get to the longer form videos. So that is one good thing that I love about YouTube. Like Instagram, like the reels right now, like, you get to blow up, but you can't lead them really back to anything. And that's one of the big issues I see with the reels. It's awesome. You get a ton of views, a ton of eyeballs, and it's good for that. But you, in my opinion, for loan officers, you'd have to get them back into your hub of information where you can really sit down when they're ready to look at the video, not when you want them to look at it, when they're ready to look at it, when they're ready to learn. That's why I think YouTube is extremely underutilized. And the people who are doing YouTube for real estate and mortgage, they're blowing up really, really big because for that reason, there's not a lot of people on it.
Because it's also good evergreen content that rewards you for, how long it's been on and how many views that you can get. Whereas with the other platforms, it almost gets lost in the feed. So some of the really good content that we post, last quarter, if it's still relevant, which it's been crazy this year with being able to reuse any, I'm like, well, that's not going to work because interest rates are a heck of a lot higher than that now. Or, some of the pain points we used to be able to grab a hold of, we can't now. But I tell clients, I'm like, guys, less than 4% of your audience is seeing your post. So if you recirculate some of your best ones, maybe you alter the hook just a bit. But you're right. On the other platforms, it just gets lost in the feed. You still have to have it. And this is the other big miss that I when I'm helping loan officers see the true value of social is no one's driving by your office anymore to see if you have the lights on in the building. Like the drive by, the number of strip centers I see vacant and open is crazy. So the new drive by just to see if you're still in business is through social. And the worst thing that can happen is if someone finds you and they land on your feed, how else can you control the narrative or story that they may create in their head, even if it's a real estate agent that goes and is like, oh, I heard this person's good, or I see their name somewhere and they pull you up and they're like, oh, maybe they got out of business. Maybe their company merged with them. Maybe it's because rates went up. They're not doing loans. And so they don't engage with you. And so that social to me gives instant credibility because if you're actively creating content, it can almost give this celebrity type feel. It doesn't matter. Again, nobody's looking how many followers you have. And for those of you who see other loan officers, I do the back end and I can tell you half of those are bot followers. So don't compare your success based off what they paid for. But it's instant credibility. They see that you are actively have your lights on in the building. So I tell loan officers, if you could just shift your mind of thinking it's like paying a rent check. It's you have to write the check to show that the lights are on in the building, but you've also got to have a strategy so that you're positioning yourself for what's true and authentic to the value that you actually provide. That's different than any other loan officer. I mean, DFW, I think we're the most dense area of headquarters of mortgage companies. So it's like, what is it about your process or just you and how you're different? And again, we're talking about this with having an identical twin with the same DNA. When I was doing this myself, I'm like, I mean, I had to do some soul searching to figure out how am I going to phrase like what was actually real versus what I wanted it to be. But we all knew like that shit wasn't true. Like that was, could I have said experience at the time? No, So it's being authentic, having a strategy, and also knowing it doesn't matter how great your content is. And I mean by your design and your hooks and your captions, if you aren't engaging with people. In fact, if you have an hour of prospect time every day in your calendar, I would argue 20, 30 minutes of it should be prospecting on social, where you're doing 30 DMs. And I like doing story messaging because anytime you can create conversation, then conversations lead to conversion. So you have got to be handing out likes, comments. Anyone that likes or comments on your account, you need a reward.
Right?
Yeah, because that's what drives me nuts is I'm like, how dare you expect something in return that you're not willing to give yourself to other people.
Right.
And that's probably our most popular package that we have. It's called our influencer package. And we'll schedule out 5 posts, a week, but we also log in as them on their personal profile. And and it's strategic. We get a prospect list of who are your top referring sources, or maybe you're recruiting.
Right.
And we are going to do the likes, the comments, the happy birthdays, the DMs on the stories, because engagement matters. And that's your little trick of, you've ever wondered on like Facebook, when you see stories, like why do certain people always show up when you have 5,000 friends? It's because the system thinks you guys have a relationship. So how else to trick them on having a relationship than just, and I don't mean asking about business. I mean, you see them post a picture of like out on vacation.
Happy birthday. Yeah.
I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because I see that all the time. Like people that, you're right. They pop in and they do a piece of content they haven't been on in like a year. It's an exaggeration, but haven't been on in like weeks or months. And then they get disappointed because nobody liked, or it's like, well, we haven't seen you in like a year. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of crazy, and they get really frustrated. And
it's funny. I figured that out organically a little bit. My wife's a realtor too. And so when this was years back, when she got into the business about 5 years ago, she was always on Facebook. She's a mom. We've got kids. They play sports, do all that kind of stuff. But when she was on there, she's from Louisiana, so they're very proper and Southern and polite and friendly and whatever. So every time she would get on there, she was commenting on people's stuff constantly. Happy birthday, happy anniversary. Oh, that vacation looks awesome, or congratulations on that win and the trophy, or whatever. I mean, it's just all the time, and she just did it because that's just who she was. But what I've started to notice was that, like, whenever she would post something, which wasn't often, and it was stuff sometimes related to family, sometimes related to other things. But, I would see other people's posts and they would have 15 or 20 comments or maybe 30 likes or whatever. And then she would post something and she'd have a 75, 100 comments, and she would have 500 likes or whatever it was. And I'm like, what, like, how is it? Were you some kind of like fake? But it was mostly because she spent the time engaging with other people and forming. It's like, we can't go. I say all the time about time being the most democratic thing that exists, because you only get 24 hours in a day and that's it. And everybody gets the same. So what do you do with your time? So in her time, when she's sitting on the couch and everybody's flipping through, and again, this wasn't intentional. I'd love to tell her that, oh yeah, you really did this on purpose. Yeah. It's just who she was. But she would comment and like, and get engaged with people all the time, because that's how she engaged socially. That was like, instead of having women's coffee or women's lunch, once a week, like our parents used to do, this is what they do. They would get online and they would communicate that way. And so that in and of itself, because she was creating the habits of being just engaged with her friends genuinely, that led to her having a lot of success in her real estate business, because anytime somebody thought about buying or selling, because she was engaged all the time, she was top of mind quite often. And again, it wasn't on purpose. It was just who she was, but it plays such a big role in getting people to respond to you.
Yeah. Some people just get it naturally. That's just what they like to do. Yeah. And then I think there's a lot of people that you have to learn it.
That's the most frustrating part for most people, is they're like, you mean I got to show up and do videos, and I got to do a lifestyle photo shoot. And so I try to chunk it down and make it easy. And for me, my, of course, easiest and best example is most discovery calls, clients will say, I want to be like the nerd. I want to have a presence like the nerd. And I always tell them, well, then you're going to have to be willing to do what the nerd does. And you can't do what the nerd does today what you should be asking me is, what did the nerd do in 2013, 2014, 2015 to get to where the nerd is today? But don't tell me if she was able, and she's the only LO at her branch. Like most people, like she's not a branch manager with all these LOs underneath her that feed into her numbers. Right. She is a single LO that helped 720 families last year. Right. So don't tell me you're too busy or that you can't do it. It then becomes a value thing. And I will say, to toot Denise's horn, no matter what happens, because of our upbringing and our childhood, it is a core value for her to give education back to families, to not end up in the way that, our family had ended up. And so that runs deep within her, where it doesn't feel like a chore. Like she enjoys it. Now you put her in a room full of people or on a stage, like she hates public speaking. She's a big introvert. Yeah. I'm the one that's like, the extrovert, but she's not really a people person, but she's passionate about educating. And it doesn't matter if it's families that see it in Connecticut, like that motive. And it's easy to get to that point once you already have success and you're not that new LO that's maybe closing 3 to 5 deals a month and you're trying to do it all yourself, where you're fighting with underwriters and processors. And you're like, oh, but I got to do this real and pretend like I have my shit together. And then you're like, please, did you sign the disclosure? So it can feel like a lot. So you've got to be intentional in carving out your time and having a strategy where maybe it's every Monday you do your hair and makeup, or you bring a couple of different tops and you just plan for an hour. You have your scripts written out and you record based off your content calendar. So then you have batched content, and then it's not weighing on you of like, oh, but I got to do this. And I got to, because right now I feel like people are reacting and some are worried, am I too late to the game? And I'm like, no, you're not too late. And
it's funny when you talk about, when you're mentioning Denise there, because Raúl had said something to me before, because I follow your sister. I watch a lot of her stuff. She's great. And he had said to me about, because he worked with her in the past, that what you said, she's actually not what you would think of as your typical salesperson. She's not out at happy hours and networking events and shaking hands and kissing babies. That's really not her style. She has grown her business the way she has and has had the success that she's had pretty much strictly by this method that we're talking about. I mean, that's what she has done. And I'm almost certain that you played a pretty big piece of that. But talk about a little bit about how there are different paths. Everybody can get there a different way. And when someone says, well, social media doesn't have any value and doesn't bring me any value, it's like, okay, I mean, it's okay to think that. I'm not saying you're wrong. But when you look at somebody like Denise and what she's been able to do, she's shown that you can literally go only that route and have an incredibly successful career if you really commit to it.
Well, and I think what people don't realize, which first of all, Raúl is a big part of both mine and Denise's success. And I don't know if he would ever admit this, but he was the one meeting with us of like, what kind of cameras do we get and what kind of mics? And he created a studio. And so you could see her game when it really elevated was because of Raúl. He will probably never take credit for that, but she and I constantly think,
oh, he was telling me in the back. He was like, dude, that's all me. That's all.
Seriously, he's my guy sometimes I feel like I have to know all the answers when it comes to marketing. And I don't always know all the answers, and marketing changes all the time. But even equipment questions, I know if there's one person that won't judge me, that I can trust enough to be like, all right, what camera do you recommend for this? And how should I change the settings? Raúl's my guy because he doesn't judge me and he lets me be who I am. And, you need people in your life like that can be your mentor and can help guide you when you are starting out. And that's what Raúl was for Denise and I. So just want to throw that out there. But also what I will say is Denise is truly a nerd when it comes to studying the game. So she knows her stuff. She knows the guidelines. She knows financial literacy, and she's always learning and studying, whether she's subscribed to other pieces of content, so that she is the content knowledge machine. I don't want to say content, but she knows her stuff.
She's the expert. She's the person that knows all the things. And that's what you want to be.
Yeah. And she learned really, and it's amazing to see that the people that started with her are still there today. I think she's a great leader. She creates a culture that people want to be a part of. She's actually a really big dork and like really funny. She's very witty. We do have a podcast that's coming out. And so
I can't wait to hear it.
Dude, Raúl knows me. Like I'm asking her all the questions where her face is red and she's like, you can't say that. You can't ask that. I'm like, bullshit.
Sure
like you can bleep that stuff out. Because I've always colored outside the lines a little bit more than And she appears more conservative and polished, but we're both big dorks. But anyways, she created her brand because of consistency. And I will say there were times in 2013 when we would post saying we have a appraisal panel class that we're doing. We are on social, we're calling people, we go to title companies, we're trying to fill a room, and there's one person that shows up.
Yep.
And what most people would do is they would quit. Well, what I would do is I would take the photo in the room with her in the front with one head, so
looking
that
like
they have, where they have no clue. And that's the difference is it is a 12 to 24 month road of absolute consistency, but also you've got to back up. Like you can't have all this marketing to a restaurant when your cooks in the kitchen aren't ready. So she created this like Chick-fil-A mortgage process that was about my pleasure and how can we serve you. And she said she always would try to create Graham-worthy experiences, whether that was renting out a water park or the closing or even little gifts that she does as pop buys for agents, where when you can, and Be in Touch allows you to rank your people in your database. So I don't know what CRMs that most people use, but there's like a 5-star, there's these different stars. And so to your point, Mike, with your wife, it's like, if you know that one of your clients or partners is actively on social media, like they're in every mom Facebook group and they're very social, we could rank, or based off if they had sent us any referrals, they would get either a 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star. So we could be even intentional with, if you're creating Graham-worthy experiences and you rent out a movie theater, like we wanted other people posting content, tagging us, sending us messages, because that's more validation of what the experience is like. But she delivers. I mean, they close on time. She runs a tight ship. She goes above and beyond after the close. She's doing annual asset reviews. She's helping clients when it comes to lowering money that they pay at taxes or insurance. So I mean, she figured out that process to where there's a lot of copycats of the mortgage nerds, and I won't say all the other names, but they don't mean anything because she had to provide meaning through consistency of excellence.
That's branding. That's what
that
we talked about yesterday. Branding. It's all about how people perceive you, not your logo.
And you have to actually deliver. Like there's some LOs where I'm like, bro, your little promo video coming out of the Ferrari and the helicopter when those two own. Like there's a difference between, like, so if you don't have your stuff right with your team or the company that you're at, or like, I mean, it's meant like that is, you are the brand. Tom Brady's my example, because it didn't matter when he left New England. Sorry, Raúl, I know you're not a sports guy, but when he left New England, it didn't matter because he learned how to develop a personal brand within the brand. But you're still a part of the bigger brand of whatever company you work for. And if you guys can't get deals done, or you don't have shop and lock or e-close, like very user friendly for the common needs right now, then that can be a challenge when you're trying to develop your personal brand. But consistency of excellence and proactive communication is what she became known for. And how you test this, because I ask clients all the time, tell me your core values, and they'll be like, oh, we really care. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And what does that look like? And what I'll do is I'll go look at their testimonials. And so to me, if your testimonials don't say what you say your value is, there's an alignment problem.
Well, it's odd because it's the difficult part, I think, that people in our position, sales, look at is that when they take, even if you just want to call it marketing, social media marketing, whatever, that's the, this is the fun, we're doing the fun stuff. This is the stuff, but everything has to be a business approach to it. Everything has to be a system. Everything has to be a process. Everything that you do, because then you take a lot of the thought out of it. And once you take the thought out of it, it makes it much easier to accomplish your day because you're going through those tasks. I mean, you look at highly, highly successful CEOs, or, the Tim Cooks of the world and whatnot. The reason that Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day is because he didn't want to have to think about what he was going to wear, because that's too much brain power devoted to something like that. So in order to be, and that's the hard thing is even people, because you do have to be creative to do this. You have to come up with different ways to catch people's attention. So it's necessary. But even your approach to creativity can't just be, well, I'll just have a whim and I'll come up with it. No, you have to sit down. You have to think about it. You have to write it out. You have to come up with a plan, because if you don't have a plan, you can't execute it. You can't get it done. It's going to be inconsistent. It's not going to happen the way you intend it to be. And then just like anything else, eventually you're going to get burned out of it because you can't get it done, and you quit and you don't do it. So, having somebody like you in their, Deborah, you in their corner to say, hey, look, we're going to help you systemize the process or systematically put the process in place. So that way we take the brain power out of it and we make it just a habit that's a part of your day that you do. And even my one of the LOs that works for me in my branch, she calls it a non-negotiable. Glenda, hey Glenda, if you're watching, that's one of her favorite words. It's like, this is non-negotiable. This is what I do every day, regardless of what has come. I have to get these things accomplished. So how do you get people to get into that place to say, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to put the plan in place. Now it comes down to the execution side of it, like we talked about earlier.
Can I also piggyback off what you guys are saying? Also, like a big part of, and this is one of the reasons why I don't want to just have anyone as guests on our live streams. One of the things I really love about Deborah and Denise, which I think everyone should also take note of, is they know how to adjust and pivot when things come their way. And so that's one of the things that I've seen both of them do, actually, is just it went from, as an example, like here's an example, like what we're doing right now is live streaming, right? Like when we, a while back, we were trying to get like our podcast studio started back at our old company, and we were trying to do podcasting, and that has completely pivoted to live streaming. Like now when people say podcasting, this is what they're thinking of right now. And this is technically, this isn't really podcasting, podcasting is just audio. But I mean, being able to work with people like Deborah and showcasing people like Deborah, like I'm really happy to do that. These are the people who are pivoting, and Gary Vee talks about, a lot of these influencers talk about these things. You have to know when to adjust, because these things, a lot of things you talked about with Denise is, I'm sure you do the same thing, right? Like, scheduling things, filming things in one day, what to do, all of this stuff is, I talk about this all the time. Like this isn't written down anywhere. Like these are people that are finding this stuff out from doing, all this content. And so that's a really cool thing about all this. And that's what keeps me personally interested in all this, is I just love constantly pivoting and adjusting, because it just keeps me on my toes. And I feel like everyone should be that way.
Yeah.
And I feel like people should work with Deborah and should get to know her, because she's very much like that. I've seen her become very successful this past year for that one reason of just pivoting and just knowing your place and knowing how to make that turn.
Well, and we were, scrappy survivors, like just growing up, where, we went from being the richest kids. Our dad had inherited a lot of money, never paid inheritance tax. So he then ended up owing the IRS a lot of money and filed bankruptcy by the time we were in high school. So we didn't have, like, we had to learn just from observing what he did, to then we went to college and we couldn't get student loans because our dad owed federal debt, he now lives in the Philippines, never paid that debt. But so we were left, we would work like 50 hours a week. We would go to school at night and study in the middle of the night. And so we never knew what it was like. When it comes to sink or swim, all we know to do is swim. And because, again, of how we were raised and our upbringing of kind of a militant father, it wasn't like he was strict. He was strict, but in the sense of us achieving. He always wanted us to be hardworking, and he would always
came from a place of love. It wasn't, he was trying to
be. And that is why I think we're both high achievers, is because the way we felt love is when we achieved. That's when we would get, the pat on the back. It was not a verbal. So we're both not very verbal. In fact, like even when my husband would say, I love you, like multiple times, I'm like, I'm good. Like,
you're all right.
Like, I'm good,
Do something impressive. I'll let you know.
Yeah. I'm not very verbal. So I'm like, I'm just, we're just natural achievers that can be good and bad. It's then learning to take breaks. But that is why I created Plug and Play. I really wanted a plug and play solution for loan officers, no matter where they were starting, because I had a lot of empathy for the ones fresh out of the gate, because like me, when I started, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a whole nother language. And every time I felt like I had figured out a loan product, it was like something changed. Right. And so it was really challenging, while also managing your own files. I was helping in a production partner with Denise at the same time. So that can be kind of messy, because you have two masters you're serving, so to speak. But it was then having enough self-confidence of like, when do you hire your first assistant? And so it can just be challenging, and you don't always know where to begin. And then you fear with the time commitment, can I afford $250 a month or $550 a month? And could I commit to actually doing this? So that's the biggest thing I see, is it's the loan officers having enough belief in themselves that you can do this. And I'm living proof. I mean, I had to reinvent myself so many different times that you do have to start small. You have to have realistic expectations. It may not feel like you're getting leads because it's more of a credibility and social proofing, but every Friday, I mean, regardless of the level of client that people are, I send the same coaching email that goes out, and it's usually recorded within that week. So it's always live, and I take between all the content I'm consuming and interviews that I'm doing, any little nuggets that I can help, one, from just being the integration specialist with, the Nerd Squad, but two, how do you adjust and pivot with, look, I think it comes out today because they were meeting yesterday on whether or not, Q2, if we're going to be in a recession or not. And then how do you take advantage? How do you help your agents win? How do you win? Or are you going to adopt the narrative that, business is just going to be down? Because there's still projected to be at least 5 million homes that are bought this year. So who's helping those people? Somebody's helping them.
Somebody's doing it.
Yeah. And so it's just that constant push of baby steps with realistic expectations. Don't compare your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20. You be you, do what you can. And this is actually, yeah, you do you, boo. If I tell my loan officers that they would just do one thing to start, it would be the engagement piece. Short form videos, which we do content days. People can come here and we'll do all the filming and stuff, which makes it a little bit easier. Or once a week, I tell them, host your own show. I say, call it a show, but you interview a guest. It can be a 30-minute interview where you're leveraging their IP. And it could come straight from, maybe you just took a loan application and the guy's a neurologist. Okay. Right. So as you're talking to him, you're building a relationship. It's like, hey, I actually host a show. It's every Wednesday. It's at noon. It's about 30 minutes. And I like to highlight other people in our community that are either thought leaders or they run a business. And, we go live so that my entire audience could learn a little bit more about, other business leaders in the space. So I'd love to have you on. And the value of that is you create the social media where now you give them a graphic that they can email to their entire database. You send it to your entire database. It's going to be value. You could talk about things like, school's about to start back up. So kids with ADHD and whatever could be of value to your audience. Again, that doesn't just have to be mortgage, but it's to help families. And that's what loan officers do. Like, y'all are putting roof over people's heads and building community. So why not learn to leverage trust through social, that when you go live and you tag both people and you then put it on your YouTube channel, kind of what Dave Savage did with the mortgage coach community over time, and that leverage trust. Do you think if anyone ever comes into that neurologist office and asks about a mortgage person, do you think that they're going to mention? Absolutely.
You're going to be the number one.
Yeah. So that's a great way to get started, where you don't have to know all the answers. You just interview someone else and they provide the value and you've helped them.
So we're right at an hour here, which we try to keep these. No. We could talk about this for 5 hours. Like, I could do this all day long. So, because you have a ton of stuff going on in that brain of yours, Deborah, and I think it's fantastic. I love this kind of conversation. But we value your time. We want to make sure that, whatever. But here's what I want you to do. We've got to give a little bit of a plug, right? I mean, you run a business, you do this. We're putting it out to loan officers. We're talking to people in our industry. So just purely a little commercial for yourself here. I know you don't feel comfortable always doing that, but I want you to tell loan officers and real estate agents, whoever your client base is, what you do. You don't have to give prices and you can work on all that stuff later, but just different packages, like what you kind of offer. So that way they know, say, look, this is all really daunting and I would love to do all this, but I just don't have the time. I don't have the time to put into it. I need some help. So what do you offer as far as help is concerned?
So if you go to plugandplaysm.com, that's the website, or make sure you're following us on Instagram, which our Instagram handle is plugandplay_SM. But there's usually 3 different buckets that people fit in. Either they may have a marketing assistant, or they're brand new starting in the business where they need some support of content being created on their behalf, but they don't necessarily need us posting it because they feel like they have the time to post. And so we have 2 packages, depending on how much branding you want or no branding, that we will create, and we email it to you each month. And then it's up to you to then you can use our scheduling tool or use your own of scheduling it out. And that's kind of more of a do-it-yourself type packages. Then we have the packages, and this is when I'm doing discovery calls, that's what I'm trying to identify first. Do you need us posting for you, or do you think, and you know yourself better than we do? So if we provide you the content in a month in advance with the captions and everything, like hashtags,
are you going to do it?
Are you going to do it? And
Right.
we do no contracts. So that was important to me, where I wanted this to be, you can upgrade, downgrade, cancel at any time, because I can't tell you how many marketing companies I tried and we would have like this 6-month contract.
Right.
And I'm like, well, this is not good.
And by the end, you're mad. You don't even want to work with them again.
Yeah. Or it created more work for me, because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're creating stuff that I'm like now having to spoon feed to them, or it's not compliant. So it can be complex. So there's those.
But
are
also says a lot for you not offering contracts, because that means that what you do is good. Because if it wasn't, then people would leave. So
I honestly want, if we're not thrilling you and we're not exceeding expectation, or if it's not what you thought, or then I don't want anyone to feel captive, like they can't get out. So everything's done through our website. There's a login. We actually don't even touch your credit card. So clients go in and it could be 2 a.m. And if you're like, you know what, I just want to pause my account, they have absolute freedom 24/7, 365 to do that.
Yeah.
So that's usually the first decision mark is, do you need us posting for you, or do you want to post it yourself? And then the last bucket is it just video content? Like, do you want to send us 12 videos a month that we edit? We add the captions, we put in, all the graphics, we make it look like what you see, which is what most people want, where you can just record us raw and you could have so many ums and ahs and we clean it up for you. So for the video stuff, it works in the same way. Either we edit it for you and we send it back, or we can edit it for you and post it, or we can do all of it. And we do a couple videos, we do the graphics, we do the relationship management piece where we're doing the liking, the commenting, so it kind of depends on what your most current need is. And then it evolves over time of, even with trust, that maybe you want us doing a little bit more, or you're growing a branch. And so we can do like parent accounts and then child accounts, where whatever we post for you can go down, to the other LOs within your branch. And so
they are like children. I like that. That's good.
Yeah. So that's basically, and then we only work with loan originators, loan advisors. I do have a scheduling tool that we created and worked with software engineers, that it's basically what all the other tools can do, but better, because I wanted to pick and choose. And I didn't want it to be something that charged you per post, per platform. Like it goes to YouTube Shorts, TikToks, Reels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn. I mean, all of them.
Yeah.
And so for $99 a month, you could literally make one post and it goes to all of those platforms. But there's artificial intelligence that will read, what type of post is this? Is this a long caption, short caption, hashtags, no hashtags? And it'll automatically go out when you have the most amount of active users online. So some clients are like, why did this go out at 9:03? I'm like, well, that's because that's when
everybody was there.
Yeah.
And it's different per platform, but that is one thing that we will offer to anybody. It doesn't just have to be a loan officer, but otherwise we only, you got
a niche. You're working with LOs primarily. That's what you do.
It's the only thing that and we also help some, mortgage coaches or things like Win by Noon, mortgage coach, Cindy, or, some of those people that isn't technically originator
referrals around the mortgage business and people.
Because that's all I literally consume mortgage. Like if you asked me anything outside of mortgage, real estate, marketing, business, or psychology, like you ask me about food, I'll be like, I have no idea.
Still a lot. I mean,
there's a lot. They all kind of go together, where I just love, when I'm going on a walk or working out, that's what I'm listening to. So I don't want to get outside of that. Now, I have gone and done speaking gigs where LOs will hire me to speak for a room full of real estate agents, where they want like that sexy carrot of like teaching them social media. That's just to help the LO fill the room. I also know what it's like from hosting several of those, where I'm driving the business to the LO, but I don't work with agents. It's all there to make the LO look good and to capture more agents.
So can you list off real quick some of the clients that you've had, like some of the
Shayla Gifford, Dave Savage, the Nerd. We help and give like strategy for Dan Keller, Jeremy Forsey. A lot of I'm very fortunate. And those are the big names. I always try to.
No, but I want people to see that too, because it's like, I want to make sure that we're showing our people that we're bringing in people who are credible. Like we're not just saying this because of whatever. Like,
you just didn't find Deborah on the street walking down there and be like,
right.
Hey,
we live close to each other, but I will say, it started with me having to believe in myself. I was making a great salary at a law firm that once Denise also went public with who was doing her marketing, it was like, okay, do I believe in myself enough where people will allow me to do this for them? So like, I'm just as human as everybody else. And I think that's why I can relate and coach, is because I'm always coaching to LOs of the past version of who I was. And I literally was multiple different versions along the way, you know?
Right.
Well, cool.
Well, Deborah, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, we could sit here for 3.5 hours and nerd out on this. And I would be more than happy. But I know you've got you got clients you got to get to, and you know, we have loan apps we need to take, although it's a little slower these days, but that's why we're doing this. You got to figure out where to find the business. So thank you very much. This was a great conversation. I hope that we have some of our LOs that really kind of take some of this stuff to heart. And you know, even if, because I've talked to you for 1 hour and I barely know you, Deborah, but I would be willing to guess that if somebody were to call you and just say, hey, can you tell me how some of this stuff works? I don't know if I want to do this yet, but I'm just trying to work. I'm willing to bet you'd spend your time, helping them understand the value of it, and you know, picking your brain for just a little bit. So I really think what you have to offer and what you're doing is not only very valuable, but it's very of today. Like this is the place you need to be if you want to really grow your business for the future. You know, doing it the way you've always done it is not necessarily going to have the same level of success that it had in the past. So you got to get uncomfortable. You got to do different stuff. And you are definitely showing people the route to do that. And I can't thank you enough for.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Seriously.
Well, thank you for having me. And Raúl, we would not be where we're at today, sincerely, without you. So thank you for always answering those late night questions and my screenshots while I'm at Best Buy. And so I really appreciate you. And sometimes it's the people, you know, around you that, even in your room, Raúl, the ones who are helping with production right now, that it takes a team. And so
it does. You
know, those of you listening, I literally, this is all done with a webcam, a ring light, and I'm wearing biker shorts with this top. So, you know, anybody can do this. If I'm wearing biker shorts and, you know, I'm here with these incredible people, then you can do it too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And thanks for everyone who is watching at home. And I know a lot of people pick this up like on their spare time. So if you're watching this at a later time, thank you so much. Leave some comments. And if there's anything you want to specifically ask Deborah, reach out to her directly,
and we've popped up all your stuff multiple times. So they got your website, your email, your Instagram,
all there for you. So let us know.
So give her a call. Thank you, Deborah. We really appreciate it.
All right.
Bye-bye.